The Bible wasn't written as a scientific textbook, but I love how it does go so well with science. The more we learn in science, the more we can be in awe at the creation that God has so intricately made. Looking at Genesis 1 and how over the 7 days it went in order of dependence. There doesn't need to be plants or animals for there to be day or night, and the fish don't cause the sea to separate from the land. But the plants and animals are dependent on there being day and night in order for them to photosynthesize and rest. And the fish need there to be a sea that is set as the sea, and humans and animals need land to be land always in order for them to have their habitat stable enough for survival. So it makes sense that it starts with light and dark being distinguished, and the sea and sky then being separated. Then it's the land and the plants that come, followed by the celestial bodies, then the fish and the birds, and lastly the land animals and humans. The ocean and land are important to us, our species, and in fact all species are dependent on it. In a very real way, God in His creation has provided us with living water. We all attribute trees to producing the oxygen that we are dependent on for survival, but it is in fact the ocean that converts the most carbon dioxide into life-giving oxygen for us. Not only are we dependent on water, as mentioned at the beginning of the series, that without water we would die in just a few days, but all our food is dependent on water. Irrespective of whether it's plants or animals, they all need water to grow. In Job 38, God reveals His power and majesty through the oceans, bringing perspective to Job and his friends, enabling them to trust God and His sovereignty, as He says in Job 38 verses 4 to 9. I have some questions for you, and I want some straight answers. Where were you when I created the earth? Tell me, since you know so much. Who decided on its size? Certainly you'll know that. Who came up with the blueprints and measurements? How was its foundation poured? And who set the cornerstone? While the morning stars sang in chorus, and all the angels shouted praise. Who took charge of the ocean when it gushed forth like a baby from the womb? That was me. I wrapped it in soft clouds and tucked it in safely at night. Then I made a playpen for it, a strong playpen, so it couldn't run loose, and said, "Stay here, this is your place. Your wild tantrums are confined to this place. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God." Here we see God referring to the ocean as a baby, tenderly placed and restricted, like a child in a playpen. We see God so tenderly speak about the seas. We see how they are fundamental to us, and life-giving water, which we are dependent on in so many ways. Then why do we treat it the way that we do? We're going to watch this 3-minute National Geographic video, and today it doubles up as a Tuesdays in Green teaching, as well as a call to us to protect the earth that God has entrusted to us.
Oceans cover over 70% of the Earth's surface. They not only serve as the planet's largest habitat, but also help to regulate the global climate. The ocean is a continuous body of saltwater that surrounds the continents. It is divided into 4 major regions: the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic. The ocean contains traces of all chemical elements found on Earth, but it tastes salty because of sodium and chloride ions in rainwater runoff and minerals from geothermal vents on the seafloor. Climate change is altering the ocean in 3 major ways. First, the ocean is getting warmer. The greenhouse effect not only warms the planet, but also raises the temperature of the world's oceans. Over the past century, the ocean's surface temperature rose at an average rate of about 0.13 degrees Fahrenheit per decade. And during the past 30 years, sea surface temperature has been consistently higher than at any other time on record. This warmer water vaporizes quickly, fueling stronger and more frequent storms. Higher temperatures also threaten delicate ocean life like coral reefs and disrupt the food chain, from krill to penguins to seals. Second, since 1993, the seas have been rising at a rate that's twice as fast as the long-term trend. Sea levels rise not only because water expands when it heats up, but also due to melting glaciers and ice sheets. Rising seas contribute to flooding on once dry land in coastal regions. A third consequence of climate change is ocean acidification. Seawater absorbs CO2 from the atmosphere, which lowers its pH and results in higher acid content. This reduces the concentration of calcium carbonate, which makes it difficult for species like oysters, clams, and corals to form shells or skeletons. The only way to stop the damage to our oceans is to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But even if emissions stop tomorrow, the gases currently in the atmosphere would take decades to dissipate.